Greetings and welcome to Outlaw Gamer Radio, the official podcast of OutlawGamers.com. This is the show where we live to play and play to live. I'm Brent Adams, joined by a man who thinks a 70-30 split is something only Jean-Claude Van Damme can do, Mr. Lauren Baumgarten. Lauren!
What's up, Brent Adams?
What's going on, man?
I do not believe that statement. I, too, can do a 70-30 split.
That's right, but you're doing a 70-30 split out of a 60-40 split. So, I mean, really, you know, you're 70-30-60, and it's 18.
Don't think you're going to play your mind games with me, my friend. I can keep up with your math.
I was going to say it's not mind games; it's math.
I can keep up with your math.
Says something about the educational system you and I came up in that we can't tell the difference.
That's right. Hello there, my friend. How are you this week? How's your week been?
I'm great. I'm doing just great. It's been a busy week, but it's been good times, and I'm just enjoying my little daughter. I think I talked about last week on the show, like she had her first birthday party, and that was all very cool and everything. So this week's been a lot of fun, mostly spent with her, but it's all good, homie. It's all good. Watching The Wire, rewatching The Wire. This is like my fourth time watching the entire series through. You got to get into that at some point.
Yeah, I know that's one that's slipped by me. I do need to get into it, but I've been too busy playing games, my friend.
Lucky you.
That's right.
And speaking of playing some games, let's go ahead and move on into the garage and talk about. I guess one of the bigger stories this past week was the fact that Nintendo, after years of just pooing all over, just pooing all over YouTube Let's Play channels that featured Nintendo content, suddenly Nintendo has seemingly reversed course and come out with a partner program where if you want to publish Nintendo Let's Play videos, Nintendo is going to partner up with you, and they're going to split the money with you 70-30 if your channel, if you want to partner your entire channel to them, or 60-40 if you just want to do it one video at a time. And I tell you what, man, if you read about this on any of the mainstream tech blogs, you would think that this was the second coming. But if you actually talk to some of the people on YouTube who make a living there and who run some of the bigger channels, and people who actually read the terms of service for this thing, I say terms of service, the contract, like the agreement that you will sign and be bound by. If you actually get into the nitty-gritty of this, it might not be as great as it seems at first blush.
Yeah, that's a true story, and I gotta say, Brent, this is growing ever more disturbing. The relationship between YouTubers and companies. This one in particular, as you said, when the news broke, it seemed like it was a great thing that Nintendo. All the headlines I saw were Nintendo allows YouTubers to post content or something like that. But the reality is that. Well, there's a couple things here. So, Boogie, I'm going to call him Boogie. I don't know the numbers.
2988.
Boogie 2988. I posted a video about this, and we'll link to it in the show notes. You can check it out. He explains in detail how it actually goes, and basically it works like this: if you don't make this agreement with Nintendo, you can't post anything. Of their content. If you make this agreement...
you can't make money off anything you post.
I'm sorry, yes, you can't make money off of it. If you enter into this agreement, Google gets roughly 40% of the money that is generated from ad revenues, which is always the case. Yeah. And of the remaining 60%, they will give you either 70 or 60% of that 60%. Is essentially the deal.
60% of 60%.
Is 60%.
100%.
Don't even try, Brent.
It's like it turned into the producers. It really did turn into the producers.
So basically, I mean, the deal is typically when you're allowed to post content from a game or something like that and make a Let's Play video and monetize it and make money off the ads, Google takes 40%, you keep 60%. That's typically how it works. Yeah. What Nintendo is saying is that you can do that, but they want 30 to 40% of your 60%. Of your
cut. That's right.
Right. Which is I think we could have a discussion, Brent, about where that stands, but whether or not that's a legitimate, if it's legitimate for them to get money off of that based on the fact that they're essentially already getting a tremendous amount and probably the most effective kind of free advertising that they can get, because the audience is so targeted, and people tend to trust YouTubers. But this is actually the part that concerns me more, Brent, and it is precisely because people trust YouTubers that they are so valuable. However, the other part of this process is that everything you post has to be submitted through Nintendo, and Nintendo has to approve it, which means essentially, which means Nintendo can and will disallow anything that they do not think serves them. So basically. They won't let you post anything that is negative, I'm assuming, about their games, because they don't have to.
Let's be specific. What they say, basically anything that Nintendo decides that they don't like, they're leaving themselves enough latitude to strike it on that basis.
In addition, of course, it also says in there that the terms of the agreement can be changed by Nintendo at any time and without cause, and so that means they can change the agreement with regard to what percentage you're getting or how much money you're getting, and also, of course, what they find objectionable or not. So,
absolutely true.
This is even more concerning to me than the specific monetary portion of this, Brent, because I even though we've had a couple of stories over the last, I would say, 12 months about people getting paid for specific kinds of content, I still don't think that it's widely known or widely acknowledged. And even when it is, who was it? It wasn't Level Cap Gaming that I was watching. It was Jack Frag, maybe. I can't remember. And I shouldn't say that because I'm going to end up, I'm talking about somebody that I don't want to inadvertently associate them with a behavior that they didn't do, but it was one of the more...
associate them with us.
No. It was one of the more prominent YouTubers, though, who had accepted money and said in the video that they'd accepted money, but it was like a 22-minute video, and they said it at the 17th minute, in like very, very quickly, and it was anything but obvious.
When
right?
90% of the audience has tuned out.
It was anything but obvious, and it just, in my opinion, if you're accepting money, if it's a paid promotion, it should be overtly clear that it's a paid promotion. And I don't think YouTubers are doing this, and I think it's disingenuous, because I think the entire reason that YouTube has value is because historically they have not been paid for, and so people trust them as real people giving real opinions. When you fundamentally change that paradigm, but don't tell people you're changing that paradigm, I think it's disingenuous. And actually, I have to be honest, I'm a little surprised now that I'm saying it, that it's not borderline illegal.
I don't think that you're going to have much of a case of saying that Nintendo is doing anything illegal.
No, not Nintendo specifically. Just the idea that people are on YouTube are putting forth the idea that they're homespun creators, but they're being paid for promotional materials, but the materials aren't being what I would consider to be appropriately identified as such.
Proving fraud in that case is, I don't know, that seems like a long throw to me, but I understand what you're saying, vis-a-vis, how, whether or not they're being upfront with, who they are, what their interests are, and whether or not they're being compensated by the companies whose games they cover.
Right.
I think that the thing about this specifically that is kind of frustrating is that it's like yet again another example, and I can't remember if I thought of this or if I read this and I'm stealing it from someone. So I'm at least going to leave the door open because I might be lifting this hook, line, and sinker from somebody else. But it seems to me that Nintendo by itself is awesome. And anytime the word internet gets anywhere close to Nintendo, they suck and they swallow donkey balls. Nintendo and the internet just cannot seem to find a way to reconcile what I perceive to be the kind of control freak mentality and I guess maybe very traditional approach to business that Nintendo as a company has. I think that they desperately need new leadership on this specific part of their business, perhaps not overall as far as game development and hardware development goes, but their online approach to everything, I don't think there's anything there that couldn't stand to have a sledgehammer taken to it and be refit. So I appreciate the fact, given the fact that Nintendo has absolutely disallowed Let's Plays up till now, I appreciate the fact that they are at least seeking some way to try and allow for people to do this. I'm totally fine with that. But it's the way that they're going about it that is not particularly good for the people who are doing the Let's Plays. And then I think there are the unintended consequences that you were referring to about, okay, well, let's say I create a, Viking Brent Plays Nintendo YouTube channel, and all I do is play 3DS games and whatever. And I'm part of this affiliate program. What if I play a Nintendo game that I don't particularly like, and I say so? It certainly seems like they've got enough latitude to remove my video, maybe even my channel, from YouTube and prevent me from making money off of it. They are going to be reviewing these videos. That they say that I think 48, 72 hours, something like that they've got to approve the video once you've submitted it. So ostensibly, it appears that they are going to be watchdogging this pretty thoroughly. So if it turns into a situation where basically the only thing that gets through this Nintendo partnership program are videos that praise Nintendo, praise the games, and don't drop F-bombs, if that's it, I think it's pretty much failed before it started, because none of the major YouTube Let's Players are going to go for this. They're all savvy enough to know the difference. I think many of them value their independence. And so perhaps for low-level people, maybe they'll go for this and maybe they'll do fine. But it seems so saccharine to me that I don't think that it will really have all that much value for either the major Let's Players or their audience.
I'm surprised to hear you say that you appreciate what they're trying to do, because, and I think it's good, but it assumes best intent that what they're trying to do is like figure out some way to help their community be allowed to do Let's Plays, as opposed to kind of the way I'm seeing it is they're trying to figure out a way to get free advertising that they can control and monetize it for themselves.
Well, that's the difference between a skeptic and a cynic. A skeptic questions effectiveness, and a cynic questions motives. And I'm definitely a skeptic in this sense.
Okay. I guess I would be both, because I question not effectiveness for Nintendo. I'm sure it's going to be very effective for them.
Oh, I doubt that. I think it'll be a colossal failure.
I hope so. But as Boogie pointed out, for people that are big like him, it's a non-starter, or it doesn't even affect him. But for the lion's share of everybody else, they're sort of in a situation where they have to say yes.
Or they just have to keep doing what they're doing right now, which is do Let's Plays, and accept the fact that they can't make any money off those videos.
They can't monetize them. That's correct. That's exactly right.
If you're a smart YouTube channel operator, then you're gonna put some Nintendo Let's Plays in there. You're not gonna make money off those, but you're gonna use those to get people onto your channel and to watch your other videos that you are monetizing and all that. You're gonna diversify. Those bonds, Wu-Tang style. Anyway,
that's right. All right. So, Brent, next up we have some more of of bad news, unfortunately, and that is that we have found out officially this week that Joystick.com will be closing shop, and it seems like pretty soon. Obviously, Joystick has been around for quite some time, was run by AOL. At one point, it's still AOL, right? Or it was still AOL.
Yeah,
it was AOL at the end.
Yeah. I mean,
they've always been a favorite of us at the show and at EBA, and of course, as everyone knows, it became the home of our own Jess Condit, who became a senior editor over there. We have talked to Jess. We are very proud of that. We have talked to Jess, and I'm sure that Jess will be fine. We don't have any news or info specifically about what she's doing right now, but when we know, you will know, and hopefully we'll have her on the show to discuss it. But Brent, this is a pretty big site to be going down.
Yeah, and the thing is, this is not the only site that's getting the axe, which is a highly ironic statement now that I've said it and I'm on the other side of it. But anyway, my point is that AOL is nixing, I think, almost all, if not all, of their video game related sites. They've got a couple of like MMO specific gaming sites. Like Daniel and I were talking about this the other night. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But anyway, the point is that AOL is shuttering at least 3 that I know of, 3 pretty major gaming sites under their umbrella. And I tell you, man, it's a sad day for me. I mean, Joystick and PC Gamer, pretty much got me the gaming news that I was most interested in. And I think that of most of the major gaming news sites, I think that Joystick did the best job of just being pretty straightforward with their reporting, and I don't really sense a lot of an agenda to their reporting the way that particularly in the wake of Gamergate you might accuse a Kotaku or a Polygon of having. So I really appreciated the fact that they tended to just focus on the facts and the announcements, which are the things that I'm really most interested in. And now I'm going to have to find a new place for that. So I'm personally saddened to be losing Joystick. I'm frustrated on the part of our friend Jess Condit, and for all the other people that she worked with that are now thrust into the job market. So yeah, it's just, I mean, there's just no good to it. Fuck AOL. That's it.
Yeah, it is a loss certainly for the gaming community at large, because Joystick was as you said, what felt like a pretty impartial news site. They did a lot of coverage, and no small matter to thanks to Jess Condit covering the indie game scene. They did not seem to have an agenda. It was a great news site. When we did have a news feed on EVA.com, it was, for a while, it was Joystick exclusively. We're all fans of the website, and it's certainly a loss for the gaming community to see a website like Joystick go. Hopefully we'll get a little bit more information about why they're doing this. I have to assume it's a financial decision for them, is my guess.
Well, the thing about that doesn't make sense is I don't understand why they didn't sell it off. Why not sell it to IGN or Revision 3 or somebody else. Like I don't understand why close it versus sell it if it was a monetary reason.
Yeah, I have no idea, and hopefully, maybe when we have Jess on the show, we can get some inside information as to sort of why the decisions were made or what happened. But hopefully, I'm sure all these folks will land on their feet, and it will be a good thing for all of us as they move out and innovate some of the other media outlets. Hopefully, they can bring the great aesthetic that they brought to Joystick.com into those other websites, and as you said, we can just wish them the best of luck, and they will be missed.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Last up, Brent, in the garage, the place where we talk about news,
and trailers. I would ask you why the Witcher Wild Hunt January 2015 gameplay video is in the garage, but that would be like asking, why did you buy donuts? Or why are you playing with Lego? The Witcher Wild Hunt January 2015 gameplay video is in this section of the show because it kicks your ass through your face.
I'm going to disagree with you. However,
you're not allowed to.
What I want to ask you is, why is Django Fett written on the document next to? Is he the voice?
No, because he's in the fucking game. Didn't you see the part where Gerald goes and talks to he meets a famous bounty hunter, a guy named Jangy Fret.
Oh, Dejini, right, DJ something.
Yeah, but it's pronounced like Jangry or Jangy Fret, and I'm like, come on, just fucking call the guy Django Fett and be done with it. Jesus, it sounds like somebody's like somebody playing, like one of the tabletop pencils and dice Star Wars role playing games. Like, oh, I'm going to play a bounty hunter, and his name is Jinga Fret. Yeah, and he's a Mandalorian. Yeah. It's just like, come on, seriously. And he's got like a reverse color scheme, where like his armor is blue and the uniform underneath it is silver. I mean, it's like so silly. But anyway, other than me kind of rolling my eyes at that,
Yes.
I have to say that something about horses in video games always makes me smile. And
So you are excited for The Witcher 3?
I am, and not because I've played the other two games, because I've started them, but I haven't finished them. But I thought it looked very fun, actually.
Yeah, so I honestly, the reason it's on here is because I was curious to hear what your feedback was. And I know that also because I know for many of our listeners, The Witcher 3 is one of their at the top of their list for upcoming game releases. But I got to be honest, man, it just doesn't grab me. I told you I've played Witcher 2 and the gameplay I felt like was a little bit overly complicated. And as I watched this, I really like. We didn't see a lot of the combat. We saw some of it, but not a lot. And so it's hard to see if that remains
a few beats.
Yeah, but not much for a 14-minute video. So it's hard to see if it remains as complex as I felt like it was in The Witcher 2. But people are going to rip me apart for this. But I honestly, I didn't think the game looked that good. As crisp as, and I watched it 1080p, 60 frames per second on YouTube. As clean as everything looked, I don't know. There was something about the graphics that didn't, just the way the trees and the grasses moved, that didn't feel, particularly next gen as compared to something like, say, Uncharted. I thought the character models were blocky, kind of, and I wasn't blown away by it. And that's not a reason not to love the game. I only bring it up because so many people bring up specifically the graphics of this game. And one thing that really bothered me in this trailer, Brent, and I'm assuming you can turn it off, but is that how everything has like a name over it, like goat, for example. Like you see a goat and it says goat over it.
Goat. It says mountain hare, duck.
I thought that was there was so much
like
Jangy Fret. That's right. I thought there was so much going on from a UI standpoint because everything had some words over it, plus the subtitles, which of course the subtitles can be turned off. Yeah, man, I just wasn't impressed, and it's not a game that I'm looking forward to.
Well, you're wrong. But, other than that, well said.
Other than that, well said.
Welcome back to the clubhouse. Everybody pull up a chair and join the conversation. We're going to talk about a very, very interesting topic today and an interesting tie-in to some discussion that was going on over at outlawgamers.com, talking about games, education, gamification, so forth. Really, really interesting and timely injection into that ongoing conversation. But before we do that, we're going to step back to the discussion topic next week for just a second and look at the poll results from the question we posted. For that, I turn it over to Lauren Baumgarten. Lauren.
Yeah, so Brent, you posted a poll this week, of course, as usual, referencing the discussion in last week's clubhouse, and the conversation we were having was about industry practices and sort of this, the conversation was around why are we such jaded gamers at this point, and why are we so angry about what the industry is doing relative to DLC, pre-order bonuses, review copies, that sort of thing. And so the question you posed, Brent, was, do you think waiting a few days to buy a game will curb bad industry practices? You gave the listeners 3 answers to choose from, and this is how it all shook out. Coming in third place with 13% of the vote was no, I don't think it will change a thing. Coming in with 30% of the vote was yes, so much of their shenanigans rely on blind day one purchases or pre-orders. And then coming in overwhelmingly with 57% of the vote in first place was, I think it will help, but most gamers will never have the discipline to do it. So obviously that cynicism, that jaded attitude that we were discussing continues on into the poll, where we have no faith that gamers will actually have the wherewithal to make a change. But I disagree, Brent.
I do too. I think it starts, it starts with every one of us, with every game. Every one of us can be a shining lighthouse, a beacon, if you will, for the change that we wish to see happen.
That's exactly right. And all right, Brent, so speaking of people who are looking to make changes, Brent, we have a very interesting topic this week. This is based on an article from Engadget about a former Rockstar developer. Why don't you set up the topic for us this week?
Absolutely. Well, as I was mentioning, there was a forum topic on OGS this week, and people were just discussing the viability, effectiveness of gamifying education. And, they're talking about, did anybody have like any good, kind of educational / game experiences that you got anything out of? And so it was kind of on my mind. And then I came across this article on Engadget talking about a former Rockstar dev, as you stated, a guy named Naveed Konsari, and I'm hoping that that's relatively similar to how he pronounces his name. But anyway, he is working on a game called 1979 Revolution. And if you happen to know anything about history, then you probably already surmised that 1979 Revolution, the game, has got a little something to do with the 1979 Revolution in Iran. And he is a native of Iran. I think he was actually, I want to say that he was born in Canada. I think he was born in Montreal, but was raised in Iran for the first 10 years of his life, and
Correct.
actually left Iran at the age of 10 in 1980 after the revolution had occurred and things had started to change there. So the game is really ostensibly trying to not only be a video game that I suppose will be hopefully fun to play, will be compelling in gameplay, but is also really trying to be informative about a historical event that a lot of people might not really understand or maybe even know about. So I think that, and I guess that the other thing that I'll say is that in terms of the gameplay style, it seems that this is going to probably be playing in the same sandbox as some of the Telltale games, in that I imagine it'll be very narrative focused. But anyway, that is what he is planning on doing with this game, and I'm very, very interested in this. As somebody who's a fan of video games and a fan of history, this is peanut butter and chocolate as far as I'm concerned. Lauren, what about yourself? What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's fantastic as well, and I think I think it's interesting to look at this, what this gentleman is doing, and think of it as a genre. I haven't finished playing Never Alone yet because I'm trying to play it with my wife, and so it comes down to a scheduling thing. But this is a similar. Never Alone is, I would say, in a similar genre. It's documentary-like. It's based on real history. It's got real historical. It's, as we've talked about before, it's based on the Inuit people and the stories of their people, and it's got interspersed through it live action documentary style footage, and it fits very, very well. And I am very excited about the idea of this emerging as a genre, Brent. And I think we're going to talk about a little bit about the game Life is Strange on the road. That's right. I've talked about, as will be no surprise to anybody who's been listening to the show for a while, I've often said I'd like to see Juno made as a video game, right? The movie Juno.
Yeah.
And what I really mean when I say that is to see video games branch out and create emotional storytelling experiences that currently aren't commonly created in video games. And something like Juno, which doesn't have any, what I think is interesting about that sort of challenge for folks is that it doesn't have major action that moves the story forward. It's a personal story, right? Mm-hmm. And when I say major action, I mean, there's no like giant tornadoes that wreck the town and then you have to make your way through it.
The drama is not based on someone's lives being threatened necessarily.
Right. And I equate these documentary style of games sort of in that same idea, that same concept of pushing game design outside of its traditional box and trying to have it include some of the other narrative genres that exist in filmmaking, that exist in books, that exist in television, that don't require, as you said, life-threatening peril, but are more about, people, about stories, that sort of thing. And I really, really am intrigued by games going in this direction. And it certainly seems that Naveed Konsari, again, and I apologize if we're saying the name incorrectly, is doing something along those lines. And I'm very, very excited to see this piece when it's released.
I am too. I'm as I think we all know at this point, I'm a pretty fan of history and reading history, and the idea that you might get people excited about history, or maybe even just a particular genre of history or a particular historical event that otherwise might not be particularly interesting to them. The idea that you might create a gameplay experience that would be compelling enough that would help them to become interested in it, to understand a bit more about it through the game itself, to kind of get a chance to live history, which is something that I find really, really compelling, because so much of history is looking back and trying to piece things together. But the idea of actually being able to kind of have that experience for yourself, an approximation of that experience, I should say, I find that really, really compelling. It's one of the things that it's one of the things about the Assassin's Creed games that I have always been excited by, despite the fact that I don't really enjoy the games all that much, is the opportunity that they provide for people to kind of live history, as it were, to kind of directly interact with history. That's something that I think is very, very cool. And I like the fact that it's being done specifically in this case with an eye towards a accurate depiction of history, or at least an accurate
towards actually being a documentary.
Perception. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is for it to be. I don't think just someone's perception. Although everything is someone's perception, obviously.
Yeah, I was going to say
the idea.
That's a rabbit hole.
No, existentially, yes. But the idea is it's a documentary. It's not just I understand that documentaries are very frequently skewed by someone's personal beliefs, but the intent is for it to be a nonfiction work. And I think that's fascinating. I think it's absolutely fascinating, and I can't wait to see it. I would love. I mean, Brent, how obviously I'm passionate about games as text and education.
Yeah.
And I think obviously this sounds like it would fit very, very well. And he said he's using the model of the Telltale games, which I think is obviously a very the recent Telltale games, obviously The Walking Dead's, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Good model.
Obviously a very good model, right? And something that is one of the best things about that model is that it's super, super easily accessible to non-traditional game players, to people that don't tend to play games a lot. From a user input standpoint, it doesn't require all 18 buttons in Twitch mechanics, and so
and also because they work so well across, or they can. The Walking Dead, not so much, but I think they've improved since then. But, because they are accessible usually on a lot of different platforms, mobile devices, tablets, that kind of thing, I think that is a great opportunity to work them directly into education, where those kinds of devices, tablets specifically, are being utilized much, much more.
Yep, absolutely. I think this is a fantastic thing, and I am very excited to see it. And I would love to see more stuff like this. He alluded to in the article, Brent, he talks about this. So this is going to be a series, which I didn't love, but it's going to be an episodic series, 3 episodes. I think he said somewhere around $5.99 per episode. And then they're looking at doing other parts in history. They alluded to the political upheaval in the United States in the 60s, but he also talked about trying to do shorter form stuff in a timely manner. And in the article, they alluded to doing, like, for example, doing something about Ferguson, but making it a 20 to 30 minute experience, but being able to put it out within a couple months of the actual historical event that he's trying to inform, educate, entertain around. And so I also think that's super interesting, trying to be timely. We don't talk about that a lot in gaming. The idea of, games take so long to produce that it's hard to make them timely.
Very true.
And I think that's a really interesting thing for him to be exploring as well, trying to create a game-making model that allows for more rapid iteration for small scale experiences of 20 to 30 or 40 minutes. And I think that is also very, very interesting.
Yeah, I really admire the ambition that he has for this and for future titles. And I'd like to see more people doing it because I think there is a pretty profound experience that can be available to people by using games to try and inform and educate. And I'm all about that. I think that the medium is absolutely perfect for it. I can't remember if we talked about this on the show or if this is something we talked about off air, but I had read an article recently about the development of Oregon Trail, which, of course, if you're part of the generation Lauren and I belong to, you probably played Oregon Trail on an Apple IIe when you were in grade school or something like that. And the game was developed with the idea in mind that you could communicate something about a historic event, which was the westward expansion of the United States, and communicate something about that people might not know, namely that it was really, really dangerous and that lots and lots of people died doing it, from everything from drowning to bear attacks to to the famous dysentery. And I think that although it's a really, really simple example, it's one that people of my generation, just about everybody played that game, and everybody does kind of know a little bit of something about the Oregon Trail and the journey west, and remembers that it was really, really easy to starve to death doing that, or whatever. So I think that given the 30 years or whatever it's been since Oregon Trail come out, I think that we're due to really take a look at using video games as a tool to teach history and probably a lot of other things too.
Indeed. I think it's a very exciting prospect. Brett, the more we talk about it, the more I think to myself that maybe we should try and get Naveed on the show and talk to him about his inspiration and what his future plans are, and just about, in general, the genre of documentary game making.
Yeah, that'd be a very, very fun conversation to have, I imagine.
Yeah, so as we usually do at this point, Brett, we'll of course turn it over to the listeners. But one of the questions I would like to pose to you, in addition to, the idea of, are you interested in documentary game making? For those of you that have played, for example, Never Alone, what did you think about a game like that had some actual documentary footage interspersed into it? Is this interesting to you? In addition to that, I'm curious to know if you'd be interested for us to have Naveed on the show and maybe talk about this subject more deeply.
More importantly, he can tell us how to pronounce his name.
That's exactly right. So let us know what your thoughts are after the break.
All right, everybody, get your cut on, saddle up. We're going to hit the road and talk about some of the games that we've been playing this past week. I'm going to start by kicking things over to Lauren, who's going to talk a little bit, as he teased already, Life is Strange.
Yeah, so Life is Strange, Brent, is a game I've been highly anticipating, a game from Don't Nod Studios that is, as I alluded to earlier, I talk about always making Juno into a video game, and this certainly has a little bit of that feel to it. Yeah. I will say at the top of this discussion that I had a bit of a frustrating experience purchasing the game, because I looked up, so they said they're doing something not too dissimilar from what other titles have done with regard to episodic content. There's 5 episodes in this game, but isn't how it was originally done with The Walking Dead, and that is that they're selling the first episode for $4.99, and then you can buy a season pass for the rest of the episodes for $16.99.
Okay.
But what I thought was that so I purchased it on the computer, not on my actual console, my PlayStation. So everything is a little bit smaller, right? Yeah. The graphics I'm talking about. And so I saw that the first episode was $4.99, and I saw the season pass was $16.99. And I thought, oh, okay. The season pass is for all 5 episodes. That's the discount, right? That's the discount for ordering the season pass.
Not the case.
So I bought, and you can't, the only place where it says episodes 2 through 5 are on the little graphic, but it's so small that I didn't notice it. All I saw was the word season pass. And so I spent the $17 only to find out that I hadn't actually purchased the first episode of the season. So I had to go back and buy the first episode of the season, which was pretty frustrating, because what I, of course, would have rather done was buy the first episode and see if I liked the game before kicking down the other $17. But I bought the whole season.
Right on.
I started playing this game. I have not finished it. I started playing this game with my wife. Again, this was a title that I thought would be very suitable to the two of us playing together, and indeed, it was, or it is, excuse me. I've played probably 90 minutes of the game, I'm guessing, or of the first episode, I mean. Okay. And what I understand is that the first episode is somewhere between 2 and 3 hours. So I'm probably roughly about halfway through.
Right on.
Plays very similar to... Similarly to the Walking Dead games, with one major exception, and that is Don't Nod Studios are the makers of Remember Me, and if you remember Me, there was a rewind mechanic in that game, a time rewind mechanic that everybody liked and wished there was more of. But it was only a few times throughout the game. So Don't Nod has actually taken that memory rewind mechanic and brought it into this game and brought it to the forefront. So you're using it a lot more, which I think is interesting, and you can. You basically in any conversation, you can rewind the conversation and check out other dialogue alternatives and then make your choices with which ones you want to stick with. Now, at this point in the game, I feel like it's a little bit overdone in the sense that you literally can go back and listen to every one before making a decision. And so in some cases, it almost takes the decision away. Because you're allowed to listen to all the options, but at the same time, frequently you're just making the choice between which option do I want to exercise. Do I want to be this kind of person or that kind of person? But so far, Brent, I really like it. It's difficult to describe at this point. Like I said, it's got something of the Juno feel to it in the context of, if you've seen the trailer, the music that sits behind it is sort of, how would I describe it? Quirky, relaxing.
Would you describe it as quirky? Would you describe it as relaxing?
I might.
Okay. I can see that.
So yeah, I'm enjoying it. You start, it opens up and you're a teenage girl who has moved back to her hometown of Arcadia Bay in Oregon. You are going to your high school for the first time, and it starts out very early on in your time back in high school. It's really interesting. There's a lot of sort of backstory you can read, which we read all of. It's got a little bit of the feel of what was the game that just recently came out that was so wonderful about the girl who walks into that Gone Home? Not Gone Home. Is it Gone Home? Yeah,
Gone
that
Home
walks into the house.
She comes home to an empty house and is
correct. Yeah. So it's got a little bit of that aesthetic of like the teenager, like you're looking through a notebook and there's doodles and stuff like that.
Are there sparkles?
There's no sparkles.
If there's doodles and no sparkles, then fuck this game. You know what I'm saying?
There's no no sparkles. So, so it's obviously it's a story-based game. The reason I'm a little hesitant is because I know at some point and this is what I talked about earlier in talking about Juno and the comparing and contrasting the idea of a game like Life is Strange feels like up to this point kind of like Juno, but I know just from the trailers that at some point in the near future there's this like big catastrophic event like a hurricane or a tornado or something, and it becomes apocalyptic a little bit, and so it kind of goes down that road, right? So I can't I can't I'm reserving judgment for now. I've thoroughly enjoyed the first hour and a half that I've played. It's got a very unique vibe to it. I've enjoyed the mechanics of the game tremendously. I very much enjoyed playing it with my wife, and I'm looking forward to playing through the rest of this episode and seeing how it finishes up.
That's great, man. We're all very delighted to hear that you enjoy playing with your wife. Moving on.
Yes.
As I said that I would. I've played the next episode of The Wolf Among Us. I completed episode 3 this past week, and I have to tell you that after episode 2, I'm a little bit let down. I really enjoyed the detective work going on in episode 2, and there really wasn't any of that going on here. There is some stuff that you're trying to work out, but it's basically arrived at through conversations. You're essentially kind of doing interrogation type stuff. You're doing coercion, trying to get people to tell you or help you or whatever. And that's fine. It's all well and good. And I do enjoy it, but I have to say that I really enjoyed the the bit of deductions stuff that was going on towards the end of episode 2. I was hoping for a bit more of that. Didn't get it. So that's the gameplay experience side of it. In terms of the story, it's really great. I love where things are going, and I've got all kinds of theories and things like that about what we might see happen and so on and so forth. So it's a really, really fantastic bit of work. It's based on great source material. The fact that that you're doing this sort of fanciful film noir, hard-boiled detective, Ray Chandler kind of character and kind of story, and that it has so many trappings of that genre, a lot of the character archetypes and so forth, and it's one of those things that, like, just every time I play it, I'm kind of reminded of just A, how clever I think it is, B, how well executed I think it is, and it just makes for a really, really great game experience. And the other thing that I was just going to say briefly is, we were talking about episodic content not too long ago. We were talking about how we both cooled on it a bit, but I think that I've figured out, at least for me, what the thing to it is. And we might have touched on this briefly. It's not that I dislike the idea of playing a game for 2 hours, which is about how long it takes to get through a chapter of The Wolf Among Us. It's not that I mind sitting down and playing a game for 2 hours, finishing, and then saying, okay, well, I've got to wait until the next episode comes out and play that then. It's the amount of time that you've got to wait. Waiting a week in between those play sessions is awesome. It's the perfect amount of time to really, get some anticipation and be looking forward to it. Waiting 3 months is too long for me personally. And I think that's why I've ended up, sort of binge watching, in air quotes, The Walking Dead, and why that was originally what I was going to do with The Wolf Among Us. And I'm not quite binge watching, but I think what I'm doing is I'm sort of building my ideal episodic pace. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly right. And I think for me, if they were to work on these games, and I would just be curious to know how people would react to it. If they release these games a week apart, over the course of 5 weeks, something like that.
I think even a couple weeks apart would probably be sustainable, but much beyond that.
Yeah, I do. I get to the point where it's like, I don't want to get all excited and get a lot of anticipation going for something that I can't play for 3, 4, 5 months, whatever it is. So I have to say that I think that I'd be very curious to kind of see how I and others would react if they were to basically work on all 5 episodes and then just artificially release them, like a week apart, a couple weeks apart from each other. I'd be curious if that would fare better with players or not. But anyway, so that's it for me.
Well, then that does beg the question: are they creating it episodically for the sake of the storytelling? Like, is it a storytelling device, or do they do it from a production standpoint? You know what I mean? And
it's probably a bit of both, I'd imagine. But yeah, that's
right. And I'm not sure. Like, historically, how those decisions were made. Alan Wake, for example, created the game episodically, but they were all released at one time. Right. I can't remember. Do you remember, like, the interval in The Walking Dead when it came out? I don't.
It seems like it was 2 or 3 months between episodes. I mean, it seems to me that they had all 5 out over the course of a year.
Right? Yeah. I don't know, but I agree with you, Brent. It is a lot. It does have a lot to do with the pacing of how you're able to imbibe them. But I'm glad to hear you're still playing it. I'll be excited to hear over the coming weeks how you feel as you progress. Because as I said, the little I did play of it, I thought was fantastic.
It's only gotten better in terms of the story.
Excellent. All right, Brent.
So,
it's time.
It is time.
I don't know. Have you been eagerly awaiting hearing what my response has been, or do you even care?
As much as I can care about anything that you say when you open your mouth, yes.
Yes, with that caveat, yes.
That having been said, I have been curious to know how you were going to react to this. Although I feel like I've got a pretty good idea, because it sounds like you're continuing to play the game and are pretty interested in it. But so let's talk about Dying Light. And
I gave you a a little taste of it before the show. But so the game we're talking about is Dying Light. This is a game that I have to say I've been fairly cool on of late, and you and I have been pretty cool on it as we've been talking about it. The game came out last Tuesday. There were no review copies were provided to media outlets something like 12 hours before the release, which is an abnormally close amount of time in which nobody was able to formulate a review. Everybody, of course,
probably the entire intention of the endeavor,
right? Which I have now seen a couple people edit their initial stories and say that they recognize now that really the Techland was working on the game up to the end, and that it doesn't seem like it was a device not to prevent reviews from happening. However, certainly it cast a shadow of dispersion over the game itself for gamers at large, I think, and absolutely for you and I, Brent. We obviously didn't pre-order this game. The game came out. I watched some Let's Play videos, and I really kind of went back and forth. I was on the fence about this game for the first couple days, watching videos, and eventually I decided to take the plunge, Brent.
Okay.
If you are listening to this and you're interested in Dying Light, I will start off this conversation by saying I encourage you to listen to the entire thing, because you're not going to glean what I think you need to hear from the first minute or two. But so let me preface this by saying that I'm playing on the PS4. I bought the digital download version. I have about, at this point, 14 hours into the game. I have covered approximately 28% of the story.
Okay.
With 14 hours in the game, and I'm playing mostly story, but not entirely.
All right.
So there seems like there's a lot of, quote, story to be had. So let's start with the basic setup of the game, Brent. And that is that Dying Light is every open world trope you can possibly imagine.
Okay.
And I do not mean that in a kind way.
Well, that was what I was going to ask. Is it like a celebration of every open world trope, or is it like they don't realize that their game is nothing but trope?
It's like, stereotypes exist for a reason, Brent. But it's as if this game went out and tried on purpose to be a stereotype.
Yeah.
It is literally like, here's your base. It's an open world game, so every mission is some form of a fetch quest.
Nice.
Or a turn this on, or I mean, there's what did they call them in Borderlands? The boards where you would go to get like side quests or whatever.
Yeah.
They have those exact boards. They're literally like cork boards. The bounty boards. They're literally like cork boards in the building or freestanding boards outside where you go and pull sheets of paper that have, go get crayons for the kids, or just ridiculous side quests.
Because after the zombie apocalypse, messages posted to cork boards become the de facto standard for mass communication.
Right, of course. There is, at any time you have a story mission going and as many side missions as you want, you can do them, you could do side missions forever and not do story missions, or vice versa. It is every character, so it's either the bounty boards or, there's an exclamation point on your obligatory mini map that you walk up to, and it's a person who then tells you some stupid ass story about his wife, and then you have to go find his eyeglasses for him, or you have to.
My wife got eaten from the ankles to the thighs. Would you mind getting my eyeglasses there, Sonny?
That's right. I mean, pretty much, dude. It is the worst, oh my god!
Well,
it's just.
But that's the vibe that we got. I mean, you remember that trailer that we talked about? I think that was the last episode of the Axe Factor. Was it when Tony and Daniel were on, and we were talking about that trailer?
Yeah.
That was just. I mean, it was just like cliche after cliche after cliche, and we were just laughing about it. I was like, oh, come on, you can't really have done this intentionally, did you?
And it goes on beyond that, Brent. The dialogue is also cliche after cliche after cliche. The characters are all like the most ludicrous, laughable game cliche characters. The graphics in the game are, and the reason I went to graphics is because I was thinking the character models are not good. They all look blocky. They're all wearing your typical post-apocalyptic clothing. There's this sort of requisite BS open world RPG aspect in the context of like, you can get different outfits, but I now have 3 outfits, but you almost never see your own outfit. So it's just pointless. The only time you see it is in the co-op. Somebody else will see your outfit. I mean, it's awful. The voice acting is it's just awful, dude. It's so bad. It takes place. The voice acting, the lead character is quite fine, but the game takes place in Haran, a city in Turkey, and like the characters have these very cliche sort of Middle Eastern accents, but there's also, of course, like I ran across the token Hispanic character who sounds like she's straight from Mexico, and I don't know if there's a lot of like actual like straight from Mexico Mexicans in Turkey. Maybe there are. I have no idea.
Right.
It just, I mean, it feels like it's literally just going down from every aspect of like GTA, Assassin's Creed, and every other open world game that ever existed, and ticking off every single part of it. I mean, it's to the point that it's laughable. Really, yeah. I mean, it's just laughable.
I'm laughing.
It's awful. The dialogue, the writing is terrible. The story is, I don't even know what the story is, but it's terrible. I mean, you're working.
Listen, I'll tell you. I'll tell you this about the story. I'm not a leader. I'm a parkour instructor. That's what the story is.
It's terrible, dude. It's awful. But here's the thing. So the graphics is one other thing that I feel I have to bring up. The graphics when you're outside. Oh wait, did I get to the part where the zombies are somewhat laughable and they fall off of things in the like most ludicrous way and clip through things and stuff like that? Did I get to that part yet?
We haven't talked about that yet.
So the graphics are an interesting animal because the graphics when you're outside are unbelievably beautiful, like Uncharted beautiful. But the character models are terrible. When you're inside of a building, like the objects inside the building, the cups, the table, the chairs, look like they're from 10 years ago. It's very, very strange. There's this weird dichotomy of like really beautiful outdoor graphics and really bad indoor graphics.
Okay.
Okay. Now, all that stuff aside.
Yeah.
All that stuff aside, Brent. I am totally addicted to this game and absolutely loving playing it. I am loving this game. All that stuff aside, and all that stuff is laughable. I mean, laughable. But I really feel like, for the most part, they managed to nail some of the most important things about game making and have therefore made this game, at least to this point, 14 hours into it. Mm-hmm. I can't wait to get done recording so I can go back and play it some more.
Fascinating.
So the parkour is great in the game. I'm totally enjoying it. It's very well done. The combat in the game is, while awkward, it feels appropriate because you're trying to create this sense of like being a little bit afraid of the zombies, and so it's not just so easy to mow them down. And it's also satisfying, the soundscape and like what you do when you hack off their heads or bash in their heads is viscerally satisfying. The day-night cycle, as I said, the outdoors is beautiful, so when you're parkouring around the city, it's a lot of fun and it's gorgeous to look at. The day-night cycle works very, very well. I have been out at night.
In fairness, to me, that was the real cornerstone of my initial interest in the game. I thought that was a very cool idea.
It is. And when I say it works well, I don't mean they did a good job of making it change from day to night, because that wouldn't really be much of an accomplishment, now would it? What I mean is, when you are out at night, you are genuinely scared shitless. But if you're careful and you use your resources, you can move around at night. And when you're out at night, So a couple things. When you're out at night, so there's 3 skill trees in the game: agility, survival, and power. Power is connected to fighting. Agility, as you can imagine, is parkour, and survival is literally just survival. And that skill tree, you get things like being able to make herbs, and there's all sorts of things. There are 3 unique skill trees, all of which are you level up in individually, so they're not connected, so you don't have to make a choice to upgrade in one over the other. But within each one, you are making choices constantly about which perk do you want in that skill tree. And each one of them, you gain XP in that specific skill tree by doing the things that are in that skill tree. So by doing parkour, you level up your agility skills, right?
Okay.
By fighting, you level up your power, and by surviving through the night, and surviving period, but also surviving through the night, you level up your survival skill.
Okay.
So when you're out at night, all your agility and power skill points, or is it agility and survival? I can't remember. They double. Everything's worth double. So there's an incentive to be out at night.
That's cool. That's
additionally, it's very cool. Additionally, there are a few missions you can only do at night, so you have to be out at night. And when you're out at night, all the zombies are out. They're a little bit worse. And then there's these, oh god, the name is escaping me right now, what they're called. Virals, I think. I can't remember. That are just like insane and at this point in the game, unfightable. And when they show up on your mini map with a sight cone. So you can avoid them, but you have to skulk by them. But you have to skulk by them in the dark. And when you're in the dark, you never know when you're going to bump into another zombie.
Oh yeah, I mean obviously
because you can't see, and you have it's just so good. It's so frightening, dude. But it's just possible enough that like every time it turns to night, I think, should I stay out tonight just to gain extra points or to go do that night mission? Or occasionally I'll just be like, no, I can't handle it right now. It's too emotional. I can't do it. And other times I will stay out and take the risk. It's really, really well done. So basically what you've got here is you got a game that's got a really, really terrible story, has got some, pretty cliche, pretty been there, done that design choices, but sounds like at its core, from a mission structure standpoint,
but at its core has some really, really great ideas on gameplay.
That's exactly right, and that its mission structure is cliche. Its UI, for example, is cliche. Its story and its characters and its voice acting are all just typical tropes. But the gameplay itself has some very unique aspects to it that are very well done. That I appreciate, and they've done a very good job, I think. I haven't even gotten into the weapons crafting system. They've done a very good job of the other element that you and I always talk about, Brent, and that is pacing. And when I say that, I mean not the pacing of the story, which is frequently what you and I refer to, but they've really nailed the pacing of player progression in the game in terms of how I'm getting better at all my skills and how my weapons are increasing. And so it's so far 14 hours. It's just enough that I feel like I'm getting like the looting mechanics and all that are all tied in so well that I'm constantly looting throughout the whole game and totally enjoy it. And I'm constantly getting just slightly better weapons or just slightly better upgrades to my perks or just slightly better upgrades that I can add on to the weapons or just slightly better throwing stars. Or look, now I've got the Molotov cocktail, and they split that up over 5 or 6 or 7 different systems, right? So there's the agility, the survival, and the power upgrades. And then there's getting better weapons. And then there's add-ons to weapons. And there's 2 different kinds of add-ons to weapons. And then you have like primary weapons like a gun or a axe or something like that. And then you have a secondary set of weapons like throwing stars, throwables basically, throwing stars, grenades, Molotovs. And so there's all those things for those weapons, and then there's recipes you get to, and then there's herbs where you can make like a night vision potion so you can actually see at night for about a minute, which I just got 14 hours into the game. And so they've spread out player progression into 5 or 6 or 7 different progressible systems, and it keeps the pacing moving really nicely without causing you to be overpowered. And so they've done a really fantastic job with the gameplay and the player progression mechanics and the loot mechanics that despite the fact that it's every trope that I'm so sick of in open world games, I'm totally enjoying playing this game and think about it when I'm not playing it.
Well, that's always the barometer that I use. I mean, when something kind of, gets under your skin enough that, all you're doing is thinking about it when you're not playing it, that's a game that's, that's working on some level. That game is working for you. Indeed.
And I think I bought this game on Thursday, Brent, Wednesday night, or maybe into Thursday, and I put 14 hours into it, and I'm completely enjoying it. So more so than I can think of any game like right now, this game is not the sum of its parts. I mean, if you really just looked at it on paper, if at this point I was going to give it a review score, I would be hard pressed to give it, probably over a 7, just based on the fact that so many of the things are sort of cliche, like we talked about, the story, the voice acting, the graphics are, I couldn't give it a 9 or a 10 because of that reason, but I'm still totally enjoying playing this game, and at this point would wholeheartedly recommend it to people who are interested in it, because I'm just having a great time with it.
Pretty cool, man. Pretty cool.
Yep. So there you go. I will obviously continue to talk about this. I played no Dragon Age this week because of Dying Light. I played a little bit of Life is Strange, but that was it. I've really been playing Dying Light and very much enjoying it. So I think that's all you've been playing this week, right, Brent? You don't have anything else for the road that you've
just the Wolf Among Us
you've been playing.
I could talk about Star Wars Commander if you want me to, but I know you don't.
No. That's quite all right. I think we'll call it a show with that, and we'll turn it over to our listeners to comment on, as usual, everything we talked about on the show this week, whether it was Dying Light, The Wolf Among Us, Life is Strange. Likewise, what we talked about in the Clubhouse about documentary game development. And, of course, what we talked about while we were out in the garage working on stuff, The Witcher, joystick closing shop, and Nintendo's new partner program with YouTubers. Let us know what you guys think of all of those subjects. And, of course, anything else that's gaming related or anything that you're playing right now. We always want to know what's going on in your gaming lives and what you think about what's going on in the industry. So please make sure and let us know. And with that, I think we're going to call it a show. As usual, he's going to be Brent Adams. Yep. I am Lauren Baumgart. And remember, guys, you don't stop playing because you get old. You get old because you stop playing.